The college football playoff rankings were released last night, and while there will be a ton of discussion today on why Team A is here and Team B is there, I wanted to go ahead and give my personal prediction on who will end up making the Final Four heading into rivalry weekend, a little bit of a look ahead. So give me Georgia to beat LSU to go ahead and secure that number one spot. I do think the Buckeyes, even though the weather may be nasty, will get past the Wolverines to lock up that number 2 seed, and here is where I see a little chaos moving on. I think Kansas State is going to beat Kansas this weekend and then beat TCU in the Big 12 championship. Now, that would knock the Horned Frogs out of the playoffs. USC dispatching Notre Dame and then either Oregon or Washington in the Pac-12 championship game won't be an easy task, but I think they will find a way to do it. So go ahead and give me the Trojans at number 3. That leaves one spot. And even though DJU has regressed closer to his old form rather than what we saw earlier in the year in his new form, I do think Clemson wins the next 2 to lock up the 4th and final seed. Now, that would give 4 different Power 5 conferences representation in the playoff, with only the Big 12 being left out of the dance. Georgia versus Clemson, the 1 versus 4 matchup, would be a nice rematch of last year's opening week. And USC versus Ohio State would have more scoring than Jake Gyllenhaal at a sorority party. Now, a lot can happen, and predictions are fragile. But the way I was brought up, scared money don't make money. I'm putting my foot down. When you look at the college football playoff rankings and look, people will talk about LSU being ranked in front of USC. They'll talk about Alabama being ranked in front of Clemson. It's going to work its way out. If Clemson wins out, they're going to jump Alabama. If LSU loses to Georgia, USC is going to jump them. Part of me still doesn't understand why they would put LSU in front of USC. Though. Again, are you just trying to cause conversation because, if it does work itself out the way it's looking like, and that's not to say LSU can't beat Georgia, and if LSU does beat Georgia, that throws a big wrench in it because that is where the LSU being at number 5 matters the most. Because if they beat Georgia, let's say they move up, you got to put them ahead of Georgia, right? You got to put them ahead of Georgia. So therefore, would what? Georgia slip to 3 or Georgia slip to 4? Would LSU slip to 2? And the unbeatens, whether it be USC or whether it be TCU, they would, or Ohio State or Michigan, would obviously go to number 1. It would be the winner of Ohio State and Michigan, the way the rankings are set up. So I do feel good about it working itself out. Mm-hmm. But there is always that chaos agent out there. LSU beats Georgia. TCU loses. Clemson loses. USC loses. Alabama sneaks in there somehow. I'm just telling you, if Alabama sneaks into it this year, we need to start looking at seances. Where was Nick Saban when he took the job? Where's the Ouija board? What's going on if that happens? But it does look like it's going to play itself out.
It is going to play itself out, and it always has since we've had a 14 playoff.
True.
I will say, though, LSU being at 5 is just asinine to me. I mean, think about it. If you're the committee right now, you already know that LSU has locked a spot in the SEC championship against Georgia in Atlanta. And they have their opportunity already locked in and set. And if they win that game and they're the SEC champs and they beat the number 1 team in the nation, no one's going to fault you for putting them in. It would be the first 2-loss team to make it, but no one's going to fault you. And that's an opportunity for you to jump LSU up there. To put them at 5 right now ahead of a Southern Cal team whose only loss is by 1 on the road at Utah. Again, we can't do this game where we say, well, I think LSU would beat Southern Cal. Maybe that's the case, but the committee cannot keep acting like they're smarter than everyone else when it comes to football. This is them just trying to interfere in the process by doing this right here.
Do you think it's a publicity thing? Do you think it's so we're doing this right now?
Possibly. I really think they think they know football that well that they're saying, well, you know what? I think that LSU would beat Southern Cal and they're the better football team and they're the more complete football team and we're going to put them ahead. It very well may be the case this season that LSU makes the college football playoff, Southern Cal and Clemson do not, and that's deserving. It may work itself out like that. But why would you do this here? It's so easy to put Southern Cal at 5 and be right and allow them to lose to Notre Dame, which is not an embarrassing loss, but that will keep them out of the playoff, or lose in the Pac-12 championship, which will keep them out of the playoffs. Allow it to play out. And I really kind of think the same thing about Clemson, Alabama. I don't get it.
Here is where, and I agree with you, here is why I agree with you. Because I look at it in both scenarios, right? 1, LSU beats Georgia and USC wins out. Now, you can't put USC in front of LSU. even though they'll both be conference champions.
Yep.
USC will only have one loss. So now you've pretty much said that if this happens like this, we're not going to jump USC up.
That's a good point.
That's the part to me that I don't like. Instead of saying, you know what, LSU has 2 losses. They control their own destiny. They can make the decision for us. We'll put USC at 5.
Yes.
We'll put LSU at 6. And you know what? If USC wins out, they will be ranked ahead of LSU. And if LSU beats Georgia, they will also be in the playoff. Then on the other hand, in the second case scenario, you say, okay, we put LSU in front of USC. Well, USC loses and LSU wins. Well, we told you that doesn't matter. The same thing would have happened if LSU was at 6 and USC was at 5 and USC lost. Nothing changes. So you created a problem. That's what you created a problem.
And I think LSU fans understand that. LSU fans are saying right now, we don't care. We're going to go play Georgia. Win the game, and we have a shot.
LSU fans are smart enough to say, you know what? We're playing with house money anyway. And we control our destiny. That's the problem I have with it. Now, Blaine, with Alabama being ranked in front of Clemson, that's another one I don't. Now, if Notre Dame was sitting here at 5-6 or 6-5 or somewhere around there, I could understand it a little bit. But Alabama lost 2 games. Clemson lost a tough game against a Notre Dame team that we're seeing has some life, and Marcus Freeman's really turned that season around since the debacle to start with the loss to Marshall. They did play Ohio State tough. But when I look at Alabama being ranked in front of Clemson, I just have to ask the same question that preacher asked. Why?
Why? I just don't know what the metrics are. Like
nobody knows what the metrics are. There is no metric.
There has to be something we can put on paper and look at and like, all right, this is what we're a criteria we can go off of. Because if losses matter, obviously, you look at LSU, they lost to what we know now is a good Florida State team by an extra point and lost to, got dismantled by
40-13
by a Tennessee team.
At home.
We all watched that game. But then we go to USC. I mean, USC, realistically, the one-ranked opponent they played so far was Utah on the road at Utah, and they did lose. Other than that, it was nothing but unranked opponents. So schedule.
UCLA was ranked.
Well, yeah, UCLA last week was their only other ranked opponent. UCLA did just come off a loss against Arizona, who's not a great football team. But the thing about it is, I just don't get it, right? I don't get it. I don't know. The Alabama, Clemson, and look, the ACC is not good, but they have teams in there that are playing well. Wake's playing well. I know NC State lost Devin Leary, they're a different team. North Carolina was playing well. But Clemson has some quality wins and lost to a good Notre Dame team. So I go back to there's no criteria, and that's what upsets me. There's nothing we can go look at on paper. I'm like, well, this is why they do that. So at this point, I think they're just in a room colluding and making things up, or just trying to get 2 SEC teams.
Well, you know what? At least for the college basketball tournament, we look and they say, all right, it's RPI, it's SOS, it's this. This is where they're ranked. This is how the numbers come out. And there's still some argument about the formulas and things like that. But at least I can look to it and say, you know what? Pythagorean theorem. That's what they're using, I know. To me, this is like the same people that look at a Jackson Pollock painting and they're like, it's worth $2 million. How? What criteria are you judging that on? Like what, he threw it with his left hand? Like what's... I don't understand it. There's no... We talk about NIL not having guardrails. We talk about the transfer portal not having guardrails. Well, none of that matters if this doesn't have guardrails. Because you don't know what's going on. And again, we need real football people in there, not business people. And look, I look about Barry Alvarez, like guys like that understand the game, that model of thinking that may have been an AD, but not some of these librarians and entrepreneurs that business people they got in here. Okay, I don't want Stevie Wonder judging Miss America. Okay, we need to put football people in there, and it needs to make sense. And also, I don't think you should put Clemson based on what Trevor Lawrence did or what anybody has done before. And you can't say, oh, well, Clemson's been to the playoff before and they could actually beat Bama. So we definitely need to get them in there. No, it's year by year.
Yep.
It's team by team. If Clemson wins the ACC, they should already be ahead of Alabama. They should already be ahead of. Now, does that mean that Alabama and Clemson on a neutral field, who would I bet on? I'd bet on Alabama.
Yeah.
But that's not how this works.
No, that's a good point. And for Alabama's case, I mean, they haven't trailed at the end of a game yet. Yeah, like, I mean, that kick against Tennessee went through as after the clock was already at 0. Then they go to overtime against LSU. But right now we're having a conversation about 8, maybe even 9 teams that can make the college football playoff in the last week of the season. That I am thankful for. That is much better than just saying, well, we know the two teams here are
who's
going to
win, Alabama or Georgia?
Exactly. So this is a lot better than the alternative. And a lot of people are going to say, well, the 12-team playoff or an 8-team playoff would solve this. It would to an extent for what we're talking about at the top end. I just think it would move the conversation back. We'd be having the same conversation about 7 through 12 right now.
Look at the college basketball tournament. They let 68 teams in there, and the 69 teams like, what the hell?
Exactly.
YouTube, what's up? It's me, Jake Crane from Crane & Company. We appreciate you checking us out. We're going to keep pumping out content. Hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on, and hit that like button if you like it, because deep down, we know you do.